Hey, thanks. I love going last. I get to critique everybody else and sound like the smartest guy in the room. I had prepared a presentation. Unfortunately, wasn't made it through security and things like that, so it's a little better. I can actually just talk to you. Let me start by saying, Ambassador, I totally disagree. It was not luck. AMLO's victory, we actually forecasted it in 2 occasions and wrote about how he would win the election in January 30th and in March 28th. 2 times we wrote in blogs and articles and published those saying that he would win. Why would he win? We wrote this line right here: Andrés, Manuel, López, Obrador's victory in the 2018 Mexican presidential election represents the macro trends sweeping politics in Mexico and across the globe. This was not an anomaly. This was not, and there are some similarities between Trump, the Trump election and the election in Mexico, but this was totally different. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to walk you through 3 things. The first is I'm going to talk about the election. Then I'm going to talk about some of the consequences of the election, and then the short-term and long-term effects and impacts. So let me just start by saying, going back to the luck, and so 8 out of 10 Mexican citizens viewed disillusionment with the current political system, with PRI. Most people felt that they were out of touch with the political elites in the class, especially PRI, and that they were discredited in their eyes. Social media was demanding that, it was forcing citizens to demand change. And the citizens were looking for a candidate who represented their beliefs, who could help them. This was measurable. We measured this, prior to the campaign, and we tracked it throughout the campaign. How public perception was changing, how it was evolving, and we have statistics to back it up. So it wasn't like we hate polls too. Polls are inaccurate. They don't reflect public opinion. A very accurate measurement is public sentiment, if you do it right. So what we saw was that 80.7% of the citizens made their desire for change known and voting, which is overwhelming, as everyone said. But why did this happen? It happened because people were frustrated. The three critical issues that we saw across Mexico were corruption, security, and economic malaise. It was overwhelming. 52% of the people had strong negative views on corruption, 26% with security, and then under that, 12% on narco crimes and violence. So we were looking at 80% of public sentiment was focused at these key issues. And they were felt like they were not being represented, or there was no solutions by the current government. And like I said, corruption then and now is the biggest hurdle or impediment to the future of Mexico, and I'll explain why in a minute. But what happened in the election? We now have the political will and the popular will. As you said, with his overwhelming majority, and now he has the Congress in both houses, he has the ability to create change. But will he be able to do that? That's the critical question. And the reason why is those entrenched systems of corruption still exist. Those patronage networks within PRI and PAN and the political parties still exist. Right now, there's, as we call it, the elephants are moving around. There's people are business leaders, political leaders are reforming alliances. This was happening during the campaign, that we saw people from PAN and PRI moving to Morena. We saw business leaders having meetings, and we were in attendance with these, and they were having meetings, already talking about renegotiating how they were going to align under Moreno and support AMLO. So these are the things that are currently happening, and so which leads to, in the short term, what's the change? Nothing. You know, we wrote in a blog, in an article, the day after the CDMX campaign, whoever was elected, the daily lives of individuals, Mexican citizens, CDMX citizens, wouldn't change. It wouldn't change for a while. And that's because these systems are so entrenched that you're not going to see immediate change. So the citizens are going to see little progress on these key issues in the short term. And as I said, these patronage systems for business and politics are already evolving and changing and kind of aligning under Moreno. So, and going to the point you made, and I wrote this down, AMLO is, he's not a socialist or a populist. He's a pragmatist who is a very savvy politician, and he is a political insider. So a lot of the rhetoric he used on the campaign trail was basically rhetoric. And if you look at what he did in CDMX and what he's trying to accomplish as president, it's not, if anybody in the United States says, oh, now we have a socialist in our backyard, we have another Chavez, that's not the case at all. So long term, we don't see this as a populist revolution. We should not fear, socialism creeping up in our back, in our neighborhood, in our back door, and some other things. The public will, this momentum that brought forth this victory, it can be contained for a little while. However, if people don't see action, they don't see solutions, they don't see movement on these issues of corruption, impunity, security, cartel violence, and then economic stagnation, you may see in the midterm elections and in the next elections a real populist revolution or a socialist revolt. Because Mexican citizens are tired. They want change. That's what brought about this landslide victory. But like I said, they will only be contained for so long. And that goes back to another point, which is the huge impact of telecommunications technology, of social media, and the influence it had not only in the election, but also in Mexican society and culture and how it's changing so dramatically. It changes, we saw changes in the year that we've covered 3 elections. We were in the CDMX, we worked for Jose Antonio Meade and Chihuahua, and we worked for the Green Party. And the changes that we saw, and very funny stories, we have great access, and we were able to sit in on meetings, and I'll close with this. I sat in a meeting with the political director for CDMX, for PRI, and we were working on the campaign for quite a while for Alejandro Morales, and we had some concerns. We were looking at at our sentiment analysis. We were looking at the numbers. We were doing all types of analysis, which includes Uber polls, which are really cool. You get in an Uber and you ask the Uber guy, who are you going to vote for? And you go around Mexico City for an entire day, and you have 40 Uber rides, and it is more accurate than polling. And you get great conversations, and the insights that we got were unbelievable. But anyway, it goes back to the point. So I'm sitting there with this guy, and he's running the campaign, and he's telling me how he really admires me because I was in the military and I'm a strategist and I've done information operations campaigns, and that he fancies himself as a similar type of a dude. And I was like, okay, cool. And then he's like, we've got this. And I said, well, listen, here's the numbers, here's what's happening, here's what our recommendations are, here's her campaign theme. She's calling herself La Jefe, the boss of the bosses, which has 80% negative connotations with most male CDMX citizens. We have all these things going on. And he's like, we've got it. And I'm like, listen, I know how you guys work. I know that you form coalitions to consolidate the voter base. I know that you're buying votes. I know all of the little tricks that you're doing. You're not going to win. We've got it. I've got 1 million votes. I said, okay, I'm just telling you, as the person who's here to give you sage advice, you're not going to win. Oh, we got this. I have 1 million votes. We have a revolution. We have all the workers on our side. We have all these things. They lost. We experienced the same things with Jose Antonio Meade, with Jose Baez Teresa in Chihuahua. This is a trend that's happening. So I go back to, and I'll close with what I said. The victory by Obrador represents the macro trends that are sweeping politics in Mexico and across the globe. And this is not my opinion. This is fact. This is data analytics to back it up. These are things that are happening. If you look at what's happening in Nicaragua today, if you look at what's happening, we wrote an article and we looked across the globe and we saw that in the past 3 years, there have been more political and business elites removed from office than in the past 30 years combined. This is not an anomaly. These things are happening, but political campaigns are not keeping up. Governments are not keeping up. And it's all because there's a disconnect between political will and popular will. And going back to looking at those critical elements of why he was elected, corruption, nepotism, all of the things that haunt not only Mexico, but other Latin American countries and countries across the globe. So I'll end with that and love to field any questions, or if any of the panelists want to challenge me, I'm ready.